What does your name mean? What does your name signify in your family? And what would you do to protect your name? Now, one of our kids' middle names is the name of the beautifully perfumed flowers that we walked past, my wife and I, on our first date together some years ago now. Our names have their own special meanings, don't they? The name Andrew, for example, a great 70s name, although I notice not in the top 100 boys' names last year. The name Andrew means manly. What do you know? We can all be fiercely protective of our names too, can't we? Especially if our names are put into disrepute in any way. Names are very important. Now, there are two things about the wonderful Psalm 23 that show us just how wonderful God is. And I'll talk about these two things today. The first point is God calling himself the shepherd as a name. This has profound protective promises flowing to you and me. And then secondly, you'll notice God guides us, his sheep, along right paths for his name's sake. In other words, God is fiercely protective of his own name. And so he'll do whatever it takes to take you and me, his children, in right ways to protect his own name, which is actually another wonderful promise for us. So, God as our shepherd. If you've ever doubted God's care of you, if you've ever questioned God's motives, if you've ever doubted his goodness, then a reflection on this great psalm is so important. Because this psalm warmly comforts you and I with the imagery of God as the great shepherd, the good shepherd. God truly, deeply cares for you. And there's no one more qualified than God who is willing to take care of you and protect you like God can. You know, sheep are ear tagged so they can be identified specifically as that owner's sheep. Do you know, you and I, in a sense, are ear tagged as our shepherd's sheep. We bear the mark of the cross of Christ. And you know what? God has paid top dollar for you to be part of his flock. You were paid for by God through the blood of his Son. It's a very high price indeed. And now that you are a sheep of the Lord's, the psalm says, you lack nothing. If you're used to an older translation of Psalm 23, it'd be, you shall not be in want. Now, there are many references to God as shepherd in the Bible, reminding and reinforcing to you and me over and over again of God's care and protection of us. Isaiah 40, verse 11 is one example. And it says there, he tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. Now, if we were to step back and outside of our own control of our life and situation just for a moment, I think we'd see very clearly that in fact with Christ we lack nothing. The deepest needs of our hearts are met by God. Fellowship with one another, friendship, love, dealing with our worry and our anxiety. God brings what we need. Although not necessarily in the easiest of ways, it must be said. Jesus says this in John chapter 16, verses 32 to 33. In this life you will have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world. I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. But if we get lost along the way, God promises he will leave behind those 99 sheep to find the lost one. Luke 15:33 talks about that. and he'll joyfully put that sheep over his shoulder and he'll bring you home again.